Well, I happen to see where Sergeant Willie Pete made a point, quite a valid point, and that is that the women don't want men that don't thirst after them. It's true they don't. We all know that. I know from being red pilled that they don't want men who thirst after them either. So it's kind of a lose-lose, and I knew this from a while back. I mean, not really thirsting after them. It should put you, on one hand, it's supposed to put you ahead of other guys because you don't act like them. On the other hand, they'll turn you down because somebody else is thirsting after. So it's a lose-lose scenario. Really, the question is, do they thirst after you? And if not, it's still the question of, do their friends thirst after you? If enough of their friends do that, we know that's really what it comes down to. But as I wrote this, he sent me some links to some East Africans that were talking, and the lady was taking the racially black perspective. You are black, and racially speaking, that is true. They are. I know they are. Most East Africans actually will tell you that they are racially black, and they don't have a problem with us that's racial. Most of them. Most East Africans most East Africans have differing views about African American culture, but they don't have a problem being racially black. And as a matter of fact, most East Africans don't even like Arabs. Most Ethiopians I know got problems with Arabs, Christian or Muslim, they got issues with them. They'll tell you Arabs ain't about nothing. Most Somalis I've heard will say the same thing. They don't mind learning the Arabic language. Arabs do call them Arab at times, but they'll say, no, we're not Arabs. We have our own language. We're not you. We have the same religion as you, but we're not the same as you. So I know that it's not, again, something that exists is oftentimes exaggerated in our circles. And it's probably because we really do think that what we've seen is the norm. No, most Ethiopians actually, they respect any African American that shows them respect. Because in Ethiopia, remember, and I'm not a fan of the king, but in Ethiopia, the king did allow resistance troops to train on Ethiopian soil. And this was part of how Zimbabwe was able to become independent. And then they in turn supported South Africa, the real South Africans, in their anti-apartheid struggle. I can't say that the original South Africans are returning the favor today, though. So that being said, it's complex, but oftentimes it has been exaggerated. And no, my phenotype is not the reason that East Africans have taken me in and accepted me. That's not the reason. Because if that was really the case, they actually have more insults for whites than they do for black folks. In Ethiopia, in the Amharic language, Nachachaba is like saying whitey. Now, Nuch just means white. That's not a political term, it's just a name for the white color. Nachachaba is like saying whitey. Ad is the Somali word for white. Adanka is like saying whitey. So they actually have more of these now. There have been, I've heard of Somalis that will talk bad about everybody behind their back, but it's not based on race per se. They'll talk bad about everyone, including the other tribes that are Somali. Actually, similar to Southern Nigerians for that matter. But we do hear this and we think, okay, so they're talking about us. This makes them enemies because we're on guard. And I understand to a certain extent that we have to be on guard. We've actually been betrayed by other minority groups. But no. Matter of fact, Angela Davis was popular back in Somalia back in the 1970s. And no, it wasn't because she was light-skinned. It was actually partially the afro and the fist in the air. And because she was a strong woman. And historically speaking, Somali women have been known to be strong and voice their opinions. And truth be told, a lot of the dynamics in the communities are very similar. But that's a different story. What I do want to say is this, though, and I'm talking to anyone of any nationality that's going to look down on African Americans for any reason for which they do not look down on their own people, or white folks for that matter, especially white folks. If you are going to say that you are not African American culturally, that's a statement of fact. If your parents came from elsewhere, if they came from an island or they came from the continent or from Melanesia, and your parents do have a different culture, that's okay to say, well, I'm not historically speaking African American, even though legally you would be of African origin, American citizenship. You could say legally, yes, I am. It's not an insult if you simply say, yeah, I'm legally African American. I'm not going to be divisive. I'm going to say that my parents have a culture outside of Black America. And that's a statement of fact, and that's not hostile. That's okay. Now, if you say this and the Black American won't let you finish the sentence or goes off on a tangent or right off the bat before you even finish, he's assuming or she's assuming hostility, that's not an African American that even we need in our community. That's a nigger. That's a jigaboo. But when you say that you are not black, and you try to say that you are racially not black, or you try to say that you will only write down black on paperwork for certain benefits, you are worse than white folks to a certain extent. Now, you may not have done to us what they did. However, you're more dangerous to us. Certainly, you are more dangerous to us. See, I don't tolerate that stuff. If Ethiopians want to make me an honorary Ethiopian, as a gesture of goodwill, great, I appreciate that. I'll do what I can to not disgrace them. If Somalis wanted to make me an honorary Somali, I'm not going to intentionally disgrace them. I'll do what I can to respect it. Make it worth it. Not make that choice a bad choice. Now, we're talking informally, too. If I were to get their passports as another citizenship, which I don't think I can anyway, but if I was able to, I would not behave in such a way so as to... I would not be willing to behave in such a way so as to disgrace the passport, especially abroad, but even domestically. I just wouldn't be willing to do it. But you who want to try to throw black folks from the United States and even from the Americas, because a lot of y'all will look down on Caribbean blacks too, quiet as it's kept. You who want to throw us under the bus as a whole because you just feel that you're better, your culture's better, you niggas are enemies too. Because when you'll say this about us one day, try to say you're not even the same race, or you try to even associate us with negative stereotypes, the logical answer is for an African American to start to associate you with negative stereotypes that have not been true since the 1980s. Civil War and starvation. Because I've heard some jokes, and I didn't like them, but I've heard some jokes that could be used about your people. And if you all are going to say stuff, and I don't mean in a joking manner with an African American you know well, I'm talking about if you're going to say things in a serious manner, just to be offensive and try to separate your people from us. And you're going to say things like, well, you know, what's one thing you can never give a black man? A black eye, a big lip, and a job. You know those old racist jokes towards us. If you're going to say that and you mean them and you ain't joking, I'm going to say, yeah, and how do we start a mass suicide in your country? Roll a donut over a cliff. I'm going to say that. Not because I hate your people. No, it's because I hate you, nigga. Or I may just go to a printer, print up a Ku Klux Klan membership application and hand one to you in front of the rest of your people and say, I think they're waiting to hear from you. That's what I like to do. I did that to a student, actually, in the United States when I was teaching at a Muslim school. He was from Pakistan. And yes, I'm mocking the way they say it, because I don't respect their attitudes towards black people. And by the way, their problems are not because of anything to do with culture. They don't like us because we're black. That means they don't like your asses either. They may tell you, well, you're different from the American niggas, but they'll tell us we're different from the Africans. That's their white stuff. And they're on it. So I found out that one of my students from Pakistan was making fun of one of his classmates from Bangladesh. Now, they were in middle school at this point. In elementary school, they had been thick as thieves before I ever met them. They were cool. Now, the Pakistani started to feel that he was superior to the Bengali. The Bengali kid's dad came to me and told me about this. And he said, everybody in the school knows that you do not tolerate racism. And I said, well, this is nationalism, I think. And he told me the story about what was going on. And he said to me, at home, we can take care of this. at the school, keep a lookout, please. And not even just for my son, but for any of them. Because this is a major problem affecting the Muslim community. And in America, you got all the Muslims from different places all together. So, these things can really cause a problem. Because today, they're in middle school. What happens when they build the high school here? Then it's going to be some fights. I'll say to him, I got you, blood. I'll do it. And frankly, I'm not going to turn your son in if he retaliates and insults Pakistanis. But it's not because he's your son or because I'm playing favorites. He actually wanted to know why I wasn't going to do it. And I told him it's very simple. I don't hear about people from Bangladesh walking around insulting black people just for being black. Now, I'm not saying I think y'all love us or anything, but I just don't hear about y'all insulting us for that. And he said, actually, there are quite a few Africans living in Bangladesh. And if they're Muslim, we don't even care if they marry the local women. And we can't marry African women. So no, we don't hate y'all. That wouldn't make sense. I don't think most of us even really think about it, to be honest with you. I didn't have time to ask him about skin bleach. I went into the classroom and I asked his son, has anybody been making any statements that are against your race, your complexion, or your nationality? He said, yeah, actually a friend of mine's been doing it. I said, okay. You don't have to tell me who this friend is. You just tell me his nationality, and I can sort this out. Really, Dr. Black? Yes. What is his nationality? Well, I think he was born in the U.S. Okay, well, what is the nationality of his parents? Pakistan. But this is an old thing, Mr. Black. This has always been going on. I told him, nope, absolutely not. I already know from Pakistanis themselves. They actually admit that the war between your countries before they even became two different countries was their fault. They admit this. So you think I'm gonna let this slide? Nah, man. Don't worry, I'm not gonna mention your name. I went and printed up a Ku Klux Klan membership application. And then I printed up a cover page with a logo. Now the application, when you print it up, it's just an application page. There's no big logo page on it, but I added a cover page just to make it look better so that people could see this was a Ku Klux Klan membership application. So when the culprit came into the classroom, I looked at the boy he'd been insulting, and I picked it up, and I waited till everybody got in class. I was standing up holding it, and then I walked up, and I said, students, Mr. Black, what is that in your hand? That's the Ku Klux Klan membership application. What? What are you doing with that? Don't worry, it's not for me. Well, who was it for? I walked up to the Pakistani boy, I put it on his desk, didn't even look at him, I put it on his desk, and I said, it is for anybody who is going to disparage the origin of another student. You don't have to like each other. That's not required. You just have to be fair and just to each other, and that includes not disparaging someone because of their origin, something that is beyond their control. All of your cultures suck. My culture sucks. God is watching, and we have all fallen short. So, is there anyone else in here that wants to make disparaging remarks about somebody's origin? Go ahead and raise your hand. I mean, you can have a cultural disagreement, sure, as long as you're willing to take it in exchange, but who here thinks that they are superior to somebody else because of reasons of origin? Go ahead and raise your hand. I can print out another one. Nobody raised their hand. Last thing I said to them is, before we begin this lesson, remember this. If you don't do that to somebody else, even if you may disagree with a certain custom, you could talk about that intelligently, but if you don't insult and disparage someone else's origins or anything else beyond their control, you don't have to worry about getting one of these. The class ceased this at this point. Now, they were different people from different origins, and they actually did get along together nicely for the most part, but I never heard of this happening anymore. Later on, the father came and said, Mr. Black, man, I don't know what you did. Actually, he told me that you embarrassed him a little bit. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but it worked. He said the guy never says anything about it anymore. And I said to him, I'm glad the issue's over for now, but keep this in mind too, sir. At some point, we as an entire ummah are going to have to confront white supremacy. Because frankly, sir, we're all using skin bleach. And this is an endorsement of a false religion called white supremacy. And really, that's where the root of all the rest of this stuff comes from. So as an ummah, we're going to have to confront this. I'm glad I could do what I could in this classroom, even if they don't like each other. I'm glad that we could put an end to that particular problem, and I'll do it again if it's necessary. If you hear any of your people disparage black folks just for being black, get on them. He told me I'll punch him in the nose right off the bat, because look who it was that made it easier for my son to learn. It was a black man. Now, he didn't argue with me about whether or not I was black. But I'm saying this to tell you all this. If you come from the motherland and you look down on those of us from the Americas, if you come from anywhere else outside of the U.S. and you look down on those of us, and if you were African American and you look down on Africans, we got problems. You are not on my side. Especially, now if you got problems with Africans because you know of a particular custom, then that means you got problem with that group of Africans that practices that custom because they practice that custom. And in that case, pick a number and get in line. You right there with the rest of us. I'm talking about those of you who just feel like you're just by nature better than some other black person. No. We ain't on the same team. But if you feel this way, but you cool with white folk, your best friends are white, nigga, you a sellout, rat, bastard, traitor. How dare you? This is about justice at the end of the day. Don't ever lose sight of that. Even all these ethnic struggles against injustice are about getting justice. They're not about perpetuating an injustice. Don't lose sight of that for 1 second. Because we were not created just for play. At some point, in all honesty, nothing else makes sense if we're not going to have to stand in front of a judge that has full knowledge of what he's judging, every bit of required knowledge of what he's judging. That would mean there's no reason to create the rest of creation. It is either a test, a punishment, or a reward. Obviously, we're in the testing stage at this point. And if there's no punishment and no reward proportional to what we have earned, there is no reason for you or me to have ever been created. There's no reason for the planet to have been created, unless it was going to be a punishment or a reward. And obviously, we haven't done anything in any previous lives to earn that, because if we had, we would remember it. That would be part of the punishment or part of the reward. We don't have any previous memories because they're not a part of any punishment or of any reward, thereby putting us right back to this being a test. This is not about white supremacy in any way, form, or fashion. You don't diss Africa because it's Africa. And I'm not about running around here dissing anybody because of something that has to do with their DNA and things that are beyond their control, or even just because of how much money their parents didn't have when they were born. These are not reasons for us to go dissing people. These are not reasons for us, especially to actually do harm to somebody. That would make even less sense. And some of you all are actually about this causing not only a bad reputation where they're undeserved, but some of you are even in favor of causing harm where it has not been provoked and not been deserved. That's something I can never understand. When it's some of us that want to do something like that. I get the trauma, but some of you want to turn around and traumatize not the ones that did anything to you. You want to exonerate them. If that's the case, nigga, you just like the Chinese. White folks did them wrong, especially the British. The Japanese did them wrong. They're not kicking and evicting the British and the Japanese out of these apartments in Gwangju. They're only doing it to black people, only black people. O'Shea Duke Jackson was right about this. The Chinese would do things in black neighborhoods in the U.S., and so would the Koreans and the Arabs and the Indians that they would never try to do in whiter areas in the United States. But who did their countries wrong and put them in the kind of shape that would make them want to leave their countries to go to the States in the first place? It was white folk. That's who did it. Africa had nothing to do with the poverty in India today. Africa, no part of Africa had anything to do with that. No part of Africa had a damn thing to do with why it is that China's still not quite a first world nation as we think of them. Not in the least bit. They ain't got nothing to do with that. Yet you don't see near one of them turning to Europe and saying, you're the goddamn problem. There's no such thing as a Korean that hates white folks and loves black people. If there is, we never hear about it. I don't hear of such a thing as a Chinese person that prefers black folks and disprefers white folks, no matter what they've done. I've met a few Indians, I can count them on one hand, that prefer black folks over white folks. But look how many of them there are before I can meet enough to count on one hand. So you understand, if you're going to take on these attitudes, you might as well fill out that membership application to the Ku Klux Klan. You're going to get rejected, but then all of you rejectees can come together and form your own little auxiliary honorary Ku Klux Klan. Go on ahead, because we damn sure don't need you among our ranks. Just go ahead and admit you are the enemy if that's how you feel. Because I'm not your enemy based on anything that has to do with your DNA or anything beyond your control, or even beyond your knowledge if it was an accident. You ain't gonna catch me opposing you for something like that. I don't like the custom of eating raw meat, whether it's in the West or in Eastern Africa, specifically Ethiopia. I don't like the custom, but you know what? If you're immune to it, knock yourself out. I'm not going to oppress you because of that, and that's something within your control. So I'm damn sure not going to oppress you because of anything to do with your DNA, or because of the grade of your hair, because your nose is thinner, or because your lips are thinner. I don't have anything against you based on that. Most black folks actually don't have a problem with that. That's a recent phenomenon, and for the most part, that's mainly been started by a bunch of immature-ass little girls we call colorism crybabies. It's mostly to do with them. But the majority of us, no, we're not the enemies because of that. We're not the enemies because of your passport. Now, we've been largely brainwashed and lied to about you. That is true. You've been brainwashed and lied to about us. That's also true. We can sit and have a discussion and see what lies we were told. I was told that all of y'all were starving to death. I knew that wasn't true because I knew white folks lied. But, you know, you were told that a bunch of us are, we're all criminals and crooks, and that ain't true either. Did you believe it? Did you ever stop to think for a second, and maybe the same ones who lied to you about us, lied to us about you, did that ever cross your mind? And I'm talking to the ones who do take issues with us because we ain't them or because we black, but we different. And then they ain't got no problems with white folks, no matter what they did. I'm talking to them. The ones of you that ain't never started no problem, you ain't gonna find it with me. And most of my people ain't gonna start nothing with you. Many of us are exactly like you. Even if we feel nervous around you until we get to know you, we're still gonna take you as you come, and you'll take us as we come, and that's why the majority of us can get along. But we do, on both sides, have to start listening to the ones who are unnecessarily divisive. Not the ones who confront an issue politely. They're okay, but the ones who just are unnecessarily divisive, we need to come together and say to them, you fit the guck out. You just causing division, and it ain't serving nobody but the ones who benefited from our colonization. You get the hell out. You're not welcome to stand on this podium and speak anymore. And anybody that supports you, we don't support. Nigga. That's the most powerful thing you could say at this point. I hope that one day what I'm saying will no longer even be an issue. I look forward to the day that this recording is irrelevant to any reality. Until then, I hope it helps. The blackest of the black, sign and black out. Assalamu alaikum.